MS Now reporter Josh Einiger is in Dubai. Also with us, retired Army Colonel Peter Mansour and Robin Wright of The New Yorker. Josh, let's start with this deadly U.S. crash in Iraq and the rescue mission underway. What have you learned, and what else did we hear from the Pentagon this morning?
So, Anna, let's just take a step back in this tragic case of 4 American service members who've been killed and another 2 whose fates are not yet clear. They were, as you say, flying in a KC-135, which is basically the backbone of the American tanker fleet. There's a whole subfleet of them that have been based in Tel Aviv to support Air Force fighters during the Iranian war. They fly up and they extend this long boom and they refuel fighter jets in midair so they can keep flying for longer. Last night, overnight here in the Middle East, there was an incident involving not 1 but 2 of these KC-135 Stratotanker jets. One of them, as we know, went down in western Iraq. The other one declared an emergency and circled back to land at Tel Aviv, where contemporaneous reporting, I should say, on the ground says that it's missing a part of its tail. The Central Command did acknowledge that this was an incident involving 2 aircraft. So it's not clear right now what led to this. They were in friendly airspace. As you say, there was no hostile or friendly fire. In very rare circumstances, it's possible for one tanker to attempt to refuel another, but that is exceedingly rare in the U.S. Air Force. So what were they doing in such close proximity? These are questions that the military is going to have to get to the bottom of. Of course, at this point, they're still searching for those 2 other airmen. Here's what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff had to say about this tragedy a little while ago.
I also want to address the tragic loss of our KC-135 refueling aircraft yesterday. The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation. As CENTCOM announced this morning, 4 airmen have been recovered.
And as you pointed out, Anna, this brings to 11 the number of U.S. service members who've been killed in this war, with 2 other members of that flight crew still unaccounted for. Anna?
And more questions than answers right now, again, as this recovery mission goes on this morning. So, Josh, also, I know there in Dubai, where you are, people woke up to more Iranian attacks. What can you share?
So, yeah, Anna, there was an attack early this morning on the financial district, the Wall Street, if you will, of Dubai. It's called the Dubai International Financial Center, or the DIFC. There was a drone attack. The government here says it was actually the debris from a drone they intercepted, but in any case, it did hit a building. And this, of course, comes after Iran threatened U.S. banking interests around the world, but in particular here in the Middle East. A lot of U.S. banks have footholds here in Dubai. They had been taking steps to protect their workforces, and this is really kind of more of the same that we've been seeing over the last several days from Iran, as they have actually seemed to dial back the number of drones and missiles they've sent into the United Arab Emirates, but have been a lot more intentional about what they're targeting. Either banking interests, things they say are directly retaliatory to what they've been seeing in Tehran, or critical infrastructure like oil infrastructure, the Strait of Hormuz, all the shipping interests that are in the Persian Gulf, and of course the airport here in Dubai, which has made great strides at getting things back up and running again. So the situation, you know, it's funny, it doesn't feel that tense in the city of Dubai, but there is a continued campaign here to attack this city and this country. Anna.
Josh Einiger, thank you for your reporting there in Dubai. Colonel Mansour, at least 4 American troops died in this war just overnight, and the secretary spoke for almost 10 minutes before even mentioning that tragedy. In fact, one of the first things he did in his briefing today was criticize the media. What's your reaction?
You know, this is typical with Secretary Hegseth. You know, he wants only good media attention on the Department of War and on himself, and he refuses to recognize the sacrifices of service members who have died in the line of duty, and he should do that up front. I mean, the chairman is much better at doing this than the secretary. It is absolutely outrageous that he can't recognize that U.S. service members have died for this war, and the Trump administration up front should be thanking them for their service and sacrifice.
As we all try to understand what happened with this deadly U.S. crash, you served in Iraq. What's the situation there now, so many years later? Would a U.S. recovery mission be entering a hostile situation in western Iraq?
The Iraqi armed forces are friendly to the United States, so if they're in charge of the recovery efforts, I think we'll be in good shape. The only chance of danger is if the Popular Mobilization Forces, which are Shia militias beholden to Iran, are in the area. But Western Iraq is a Sunni region, and so I don't think that's going to be the case here.
Robin, Secretary Hegseth also said people, quote, don't need to worry about the Strait of Hormuz. Is that going to reassure allies and Gulf neighbors about the administration's plan to contain this war?
No, that's the simple answer. Unfortunately, there's a good bit of spin going on at the Pentagon and the White House about the progress the United States is making, indicating that this will either be over soon or that they're significantly damaging Iran's assets. There is obviously a great deal of destruction, but the Iranians are fighting an asymmetric war, very different than the United States. And they do still have assets, as they're demonstrating with their potential mines of the Strait of Hormuz and the edict that no ships will pass it. Because of the geography, Iran has control over all ships that go into the Persian Gulf, including U.S. military ships. And that choke point is controlled by the Revolutionary Guards. The U.S. even has dealt with the Revolutionary Guards when it wants to send its ships to Bahrain, where we have a major naval port. But, you know, this is, again, the kind of bluff by the Pentagon about, you know, what damage they're making and what control they can have down the road. Just briefly, I covered the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s when the U.S. also deployed tankers to escort ships, and it didn't turn out all that well.
That's a good point, and history may be our guide here. Colonel, Secretary Hegseth said Iran's new supreme leader may be disfigured and is in hiding. Let's watch.
The new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement. He called for unity. Apparently killing tens of thousands of protesters is his kind of unity. Iran has plenty of cameras and plenty of voice recorders. Why a written statement? I think you know why. His father, dead. He's scared, he's injured, he's on the run, and he lacks legitimacy.
Colonel, do you expect the U.S. and Israel have an idea of where he is right now?
They may have agents on the ground that have some idea, but, you know, quite frankly, it doesn't matter. We could kill this supreme leader and another one would be elected from the IRGC ranks or someone who's sympathetic to the IRGC. There is no chance that there's going to be a Delcy Rodriguez that emerges from the Iranian government. And so whether the current supreme leader is disfigured, on the run, doesn't really matter, because the Iranian regime is not going to change its outlook on this war. It is playing a long game, and it is going to drag this war out as long as it can and keep the Straits of Hormuz closed to put pressure on the world economy and therefore on the United States to end the war on its terms.
Robin, you wrote a fascinating piece about the new supreme leader, and you note that during his father's 37-year reign, Moshtaba kept out of the public eye, was rarely photographed or quoted, never held a government title or elected position. And now here he's waited days after he was announced as the new supreme leader to even put out a public statement. Still hasn't been seen on camera or on video. Why do you think it took so long to hear from him? And can he rule from the shadows in Iran?
Well, in the last few years of his life, the supreme leader also, his father also, was not all that public. But remember, his father was also disfigured. He lost the use of his right arm and hand. after a tape recorder bomb went off when he was giving a sermon on Fridays. And so he has been disfigured. It's kind of a badge of honor. So depending on how severe the disfigurement is, if he does manage to heal in some way, the idea that he has been a kind of quasi-martyr to the cause may play well down the road. But yes, he's going to be a target, but Peter's right. They will, the regime so far has a deep bench and is capable of replacing whether it's its clerical, political, or especially Revolutionary Guard commanders.
Got to leave it there for now. Robin Wright and Colonel Peter Mansour, thank you both so much for your depth of insight and knowledge of all of this.